some say the age of design generalists, it's here, and product designers are in super high demand. Organizations love them because they take an idea to the final product, they argue the business case. But the question is, how can UX designers be product designers? But I think it might be healthy to define the term. What is a product designer?
Many people have different definitions. Ultimately, we started from a space of UI and UX design becoming prominent. And that meant that businesses typically would kind of say, hey, we have this problem to solve and we have this solution in mind. So, like, why don't you go ahead and build a solution? That's when UI and UX design came in. From a user experience perspective, we would kind of speak to the users, understand what their needs are, and then like develop a solution that meets those needs. I think that when things started becoming different is when companies started realizing that there is a limited space in which a designer can have an impact, which is you give them the suggested solution and then they design it and it's usable and it meets the user needs. But there is a wider conversation around what are the problems to be solved? How can we define those problems with research rather than just looking at the solution space? And also, and extremely importantly, how do we make stuff that is not just usable, but also stuff that make a real business impact? To me, product design is basically what combines the disciplines of UI and UX, but adds two things. It adds what is the problem that is to be solved rather than just taking this for granted, right? And secondly, how do we make sure that the design decisions that we're making, the problems we're focusing in, the solutions we're approaching are the solutions that are right for the user, but ultimately right for the business too. And I think that's the hardest bit around product design, if I'm being honest, and something that I often have to talk to people and really figure out how to train people into doing that. I think that's kind of like where we are in the space.
I think the challenge is can a UI designer, a UX designer become product designers? Or can a product manager become a product designer? The answer that I always give is, of course they can. It's just how much can they zoom out and care about all the facets that you spoke about. And I think when I felt the most like a product designer is when I was working in a consultancy where we didn't have PMs and we worked with the clients and it was all design led. I think at the beginning of any project, it was sort of taking the inputs, but also guiding the client to why it would be interesting to explore this. Here's how it could help your business. Have you thought about this? Of course, they are the experts of their business, but sometimes they're just so one dimensional or haven't thought about it in a way that maybe we have. It's almost the combination of a designer and a PM.
To be honest, even if we look at today's industry, take every company out there, like slice it into samples and take, small startup, big company, consultancy. If you ask them what a PM and what a designer do, there's so much overlap, but it also changes so much from company to company. What I've seen is you have companies where PM drives a lot of the discovery and the research and works really closely with the designer. And then there's companies, like especially larger companies, where the PM actually doesn't take on research or design or anything at all, but they do take on, let's say, ownership of their roadmap. What should be the next thing that we drive in terms of business impact? And then like the whole discovery and solutionizing is up to the designer. And they feel like draw in like the PM when they need to. And I don't think there is a recipe for it. Like I have an idea of what it means to be a good PM or a good PD, but the harsh truth is it really depends. And you just need to adapt based on what's the company, what are you trying to get done, how mature is your organization, what is also the person that you're working with. Like a designer that is amazing at research, for example, might need less support from a PM in doing this. But then if you have a PM that is actually amazing at discovery, then by all means, you should leverage them and like do it together and then figure out maybe you can help in other parts of it. Like what is the commercial impact of what you're doing? So I think it's really fluid. And because those two roles have this huge aspect and spectrum of what are the areas that you can really dive deeper, I think there's no clear definition. But yeah, I think it's a really good way to describe it. Actually, it's not overly simplified in my eyes.
Yeah, I think about it like football players, like FIFA, where you have this radar chart. One person's going to be more speed, more strength, better at dribbling the ball. And I think product designers out there, you have your strengths and your weaknesses. So it isn't all product designers are the same, but covering those three areas that you mentioned, the user side, the product side, and the solutioning side makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned something that was really interesting, which is picking the right problem to solve. Could you elaborate more on that?
I think this is one of the most fascinating areas for me. We went from years and years of the business picking the problem to solve and saying, this is the key for the business, this is the problem we should be focusing. But then slowly we realized that designers then spend so much of their capacity solving the wrong things. And by the way, this is a really hard thing. There's no easy way to understand whether you're picking the right or the wrong thing. But I think there's a big opportunity for a designer, even a PM and a tech lead, to say, actually, we don't believe this is the right problem to solve. And a company will have like 1,000 problems. Picking the one that you're going to spend weeks or months solving is really, really crucial. And this is why I think the designer and the PM's responsibility is to really assess, is this the right bet? Are we focusing on the right thing? Even if we've done some work on the wrong problem, what is the right time to say, actually, no, you know what? This is a symptom. Maybe there's something else that's causing this problem. This is what we need to solve. A great example of this is designers will often focus on usability, or a PM will say, hey, conversion is our biggest problem. In this step, we're seeing a drop in users, right? We need to convert more users, but we've highlighted this thing. So there must be something wrong with the usability, or there must be something wrong with the design of the page. So let's come up with 5 different permutations. And what we often find is there is a symptom, like there's some data that indicates that something is wrong, but the actual problem lies way earlier. It might be that you're not addressing the right user problem. It might be that you're trying to sell something that the user just doesn't want to buy. And no matter what layout or design or anything you put on top of it, you're never going to manage to make it work. It might be that you're asking for input, or you're asking users to convert at the wrong time. Getting that ability to identify what is an important problem and what isn't, and usually that is a combination of what are the business priorities and what are the user problems and where do those things connect. I think this is probably the most impactful thing that a product designer can build. And this is what we commonly define as like product sense. The only tough thing is that there's no given way to develop product sense. It's so freaking difficult.
Trying to solve the right problem sounds like asking a lot of questions and figuring out which question to ask. Do you have like a mental model or to kind of approach this?
Absolutely, yeah. There's one thing that really separates amazing designers from good designers. And I think that's
Want to listen to the full conversation? Click the video on screen now. Subscribe to the channel if you want to join us live. Oh, wait. Okay, fine, you don't have to join us for the live stream, but if you like stuff like this, then click that subscribe button. I'll see you on the inside. Bye!